I'm Zim, and you're listening to the Helpful Photographer Podcast in collaboration with Boundless Photo Safari. To register for a safari, please visit boundlessphotosafari.com. Today I'm talking to Dr. Jennifer Keister, who has been on the Polar Latitudes 21-day tour. She is an avid photographer, so I thought it would be really good to get her perspective on some of the things that we might encounter on our upcoming trip. So, first question, Jen. What was your experience with the Drake Passage like?
Mine was relatively fine. They have a saying that it's either the Drake Lake or the Drake Shake. I got much more on the lake end of the spectrum. So generally it felt rough, but honestly not too bad. Nothing fell off the table. I didn't throw up. It was fine.
Just so everyone knows, Jen is the fourth person I've spoken to who's been on this trip, and her experience pretty much tracks with everybody else's experience that I've spoken to. However, it is a highly unpredictable environment. We can hope for the Drake Lake, but we may get the Drake Shake as well. So everyone just needs to be prepared for this. Next question. Did you get seasick and how did you deal with it?
So my guess is that the symptoms vary by person. For me, I tend to feel a little bit queasy and sleepy, which actually isn't too bad. So I mostly dealt with it by either just curling up in bed or I took Dramamine. And the side effects of Dramamine for me are I feel a little queasy and a little sleepy. So it was 6 to 1, half a dozen the other.
For those of you who don't know, Dramamine is available over the counter. There are 2 other drugs that doctors are prescribing right now, and it's Zofran, also known as Ondansetron, and scopolamine. Scopolamine generally comes in a patch and it's slow release. My understanding is scopolamine, if you have a bad reaction, it's going to take 2 or 3 days to come out of your system. People who've traveled with me have had very good experiences with Ondansetron for motion sickness on mountainous roads, but it is still by prescription only, so I do suggest that everyone call their doctor and see what's good for you. Now, without taking drugs, there is another option. I've been told that ginger candy is really, really good for motion sickness.
I'd agree. They actually have that available freely. In my experience, they had 2 bowls in the central area. One was Dramamine and the other was ginger.
So is that ginger candy or candied ginger?
Candied ginger. I also brought some ginger candy with me. I find that particularly effective, but there's definitely enough candied ginger to go around.
Let's talk about the daily schedule real quick. What time did they want you up and at breakfast?
They will tell you. Their goal is to get you off the boat as often as possible, but they are largely dictated by the weather. We usually got off the boat no later than 8 a.m., but they have a daily briefing at the top of the day and at the bottom of the day, and they will tell you the night before when you're getting up to go the morning after.
So breakfast came before or after the landing?
Before the landing.
If you had a full day, breakfast probably happened around 6:30, 7 o'clock, off the boat around 8, couple hours there, 10 o'clock, come back on the boat, and then what?
Then you have your lunch while they motor to the next spot, and then you get off again.
That puts us at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's a pretty long time till bedtime. Is that when we're expecting lectures and things like that?
Yeah, the evenings were relatively flexible. So again, if you get off the boat, you do your afternoon on shore, you come back, get yourself recombobulated. There'd be like maybe an hour or 2, then you'd go to dinner. Sometimes they show movies, sometimes they do lectures. Sometimes those of us on board, we have card games or something like that. It's, again, absent internet, you're down to the good old-fashioned forms of fun. I could take all my photos down. I could go through my photos that day. I certainly had plenty of time to manage my photo workflow for sure.
So what about food and drink? I'm told that part of our service includes beer and wine.
That was certainly my experience. On a daily basis, they have set times for all of the meals. I don't remember exactly what they were, but they time them out so that they will work around the shore schedule. Everything's driven by the shore schedule, but you're also definitely not going to starve. Breakfast and lunch were buffet style with a huge range of options. And then dinner was sit down, and they had 2 or 3 options, I think, each night for dinner. And I do not know how they did this, but my voyage was 4 weeks. In week 4, we had fresh lettuce. I have no idea how they pulled this off. So yeah, they will not let you starve. In between those hours, one of the public areas on the boat is sort of the bar towards the back. That's where they show some of the lectures. That's where they'll often offer the daily briefing for the next day's activities and the recap for the current day. That's also open for most of the day, and you can go and get a drink. They don't really have snacks, but you can definitely get a drink.
Okay, so if you need snacks, bring your own snacks.
Bring snacks.
I will be bringing snacks. When there was downtime on the boat, there's going to be some citizen science stuff. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the crew does a couple things during downtime. Citizen Science is a program, I think it's actually spread across cruise operators. Basically, the problem is like nobody lives in these areas and relatively few people go there. So it's an attempt to basically bring folks into sort of the scientific exploration that you can do in these areas and take advantage of like potential data collection opportunities. So these are usually fairly straightforward. It's looking at the types of clouds that you're getting, counting birds, looking for like seaweed rafts. You're always looking for whales. They're usually pretty simplistic. I mean, they're citizen science, so they're designed so you non-experts can actually do this. Each member of the crew has a different area of expertise. You know, we had a geologist, we had a number of folks who were experts on sea mammals, land mammals, birds, etc. So each one will be kind of led by the science, like the crew member who has that area of expertise. And it's an excuse to get out there and contribute to their data collection, and you can also engage them in conversation around the ecosystem and why this is important. The crew members will also provide lectures within their area of expertise. So you'll have a lecture from the bird expert on what the types of birds are, or maybe you've seen, like maybe we went to like the king penguin colony that day, in which case they'll provide a lecture on specifically on the king penguins or something that's coming up. So they try to keep it relevant to like what you're actually about to or have just seen. And those can be pretty interesting. The folks that they get on board are usually actually fairly expert in their areas and they have a lot to share. You can also pester them with questions, which was one of the reasons I actually picked Polar Latitudes, was the fact that they get experts in these positions.
My understanding is that there are two public spaces on board. Polar Latitudes has offered me the audiovisual equipment. So if you do not want to participate in the lectures, I'm going to be lecturing on Lightroom and Photoshop, provided that I'm not seasick. So that'll be available too. What did you do when you were unable to do a shore landing?
I tried to spend as little time in my room as possible. So if the weather was nice and there was something to see, I would often go out on deck and watch for whales, you can watch for birds, you can watch the icebergs go by. If there's absolutely nothing to look at, I would actually sit in the bar area and read a book. They have movies on the television. They are what they are. If you have something you particularly want to see, I'd recommend downloading it in advance.
What about internet access? I understand we have internet access.
The trip that I was on, I don't know if they've changed it. We had a card for X number of minutes of internet access, and you could re-up if you need to. So basically, long story short, was there was no unlimited internet access, and it was not fast. So you could use it to basically check email, check in with somebody else. You're not going to be streaming Netflix. Be prepared. I basically went cold turkey for the whole trip. I had a sat phone where I could get text messages, and that was about it.
Okay, sat phone. Which sat phone provider did you go with?
I have the Garmin Mini.
And that worked okay?
It worked okay. It was intermittent, in part because it depended which side of the boat, and because satellite coverage is limited at the poles, it turns out, because nobody lives there.
What was it like to get on and off the Zodiacs that take us to the land?
So getting on the Zodiac, from their perspective, the tour managers, that's the riskiest part of it, because you're moving from the boat to the Zodiac, and both of them can be moving and moving independently. So they try to time that well, and that's actually their single biggest concern with whether or not they're going to let you get off the boat, is if the water is rough at all, that's what they're concerned about, is that you're going to have an accident. That being said, they do make it pretty easy for you. They have a whole slew of deckhands whose sole job was to transport you from one to the other. They will offer you an arm. If the arm is insufficient, they will pick you up and move you like a piece of luggage. They will make sure you physically get from point A to point B. They will move you forward. They'll carry your bag for you. They'll hand that over as well. So that's getting on. Getting off, they'll run the Zodiacs basically aground. So you're usually getting off in at least, there's going to be a little bit of water. That's in part why you have the muck boots that they'll give you, so that the water will not be deeper than the muck boots. But yeah, expect to get out and then kind of wade lightly ashore.
So, is there any opportunity for my camera bag to go in the drink?
Probably go in the drink, no. Get splashed, yes. Zodiacs are sort of designed to cut through waves and light surf. As I said, they will be very careful to try to not let you out in things that are rough, just for safety concerns. That being said, the weather can be unpredictable, and you could expect some like small waves that will splash up or even break over the bow of the Zodiac. You drop your camera bag in the water, that's obviously going to be a problem. That seems very unlikely, but you may get splashed. I mean, I got splashed in the Zodiac a couple of times.
And you said at one point a wave kind of came out of nowhere and just kind of hit
It
everyone.
wasn't a big wave. We definitely got splashed. And then there were the ones where I was dressed for it anyway. I was like, put me on the front of the boat. I want the splash. So you can do that too.
But you would have been very unhappy had you had your camera in your hands. Is that correct?
Yes, I would have in that case.
I know that you carried a waterproof bag and you had advised me to bring one as well. You kept your cameras in that waterproof bag getting to and from the boat then.
Yes, so my approach was I would wrap my cameras up in like foam cloth. They were padded with Velcro. And then I would pack them into the bottom. I just had a big dry bag with a roll top and straps like a backpack. So I would hand that over when I got into the Zodiac. It would get put either between my feet or towards the back of the Zodiac. But because it was waterproof sack, I wasn't concerned about it getting splashed.
So sometimes you could put the bag between your feet or it would go in the back of the boat.
It varied. I think it depended either on the boat operator or how they were trying to balance it for that trip. I did not count on being able to control the bag the entire time.
Is it enough to just have that rain cover over a camera bag?
I would be cautious about that just because if you don't control it, you can't control which side is up. So at least with my bag, like if I put the rain cover over it, it actually doesn't go all the way around. So I'd be concerned I would get splashed on the side that didn't have the rain cover or that it would get through. I just felt more comfortable with something that was completely waterproof.
You would stick with that if you had to go back and do this again.
Yeah.
So what happened after the boat landed?
When I get off the Zodiac, if they hand me my bag, I wade ashore. And then they will always have some tarps there for some equipment that you're going to have to take off your life vest that you're on in the Zodiac. And then you're going to have to pick up some ski poles and some other equipment if that's necessary.
So you think it would be okay for us to use the tarp as a workspace to load and unload our bags and get settled?
That's exactly what I did. Because, yeah, my cameras were wrapped up and then tucked into the waterproof bag. So when I got off the Zodiac, I put down the waterproof bag, pulled everything out, unwrapped it, stuck all the wrappers back in, put on my camera harness, and just stuck my backpack on my back, and off I went. So yeah, I would use it as a staging area.
You carried two cameras. Why did you carry two cameras?
I did that because it's not a particularly permissive environment for switching lenses. My fingers also get cold and I get slow and clumsy with them. So I did that specifically so that I would not have to switch lenses in the environment.
What did you mean it's not a permissive environment for changing lenses?
It's windy and there can be precipitation. So in addition to the splashing on the Zodiac, sometimes it snows, doesn't usually sleet, but it can also pick up like particles of snow that are just everywhere and blow them around.
Okay, so the weather, as I understand, is extremely unpredictable. And it sounds like you are definitely confirming that.
Yes.
So it feels like you're going to need wide lenses and long lenses because you're going to need the wide for the landscape shots, and then you're going to need the long lenses to shoot those animals out there. So each of you are going to have to make a decision as to whether or not you need two cameras loaded with a long and a wide, or you're going to change lenses on site. I personally don't plan on carrying two cameras on shore because I'm very, very comfortable changing my lenses even in relatively adverse environments. Was there anything you wish you had brought that you didn't bring?
No, I brought everything from 14 to about 400 millimeters. Again, to capture, to your point, you got wide angle shots, you got close up shots, you need everything in between. So I was covered on that front. I'd say bring good filters that you can wipe off cleanly in case you get something on them with the wind blowing everywhere.
What about a macro lens?
I didn't need one in part. Can't get that close to stuff. They don't like you to get that close to stuff.
With regards to a waterproof filter, you guys can all reach out to me about that. Don't forget, I am an EC dealer. I can help you guys get those as well. Which also brings in you guys definitely need to have a backup strategy as well and make sure that you have enough external hard drive space. For those of you who are doing any kind of pre-shooting, you're going to be slamming tons of frames. So make sure you have extra terabytes of storage space as well.
Bring external hard drives, bring extra SD cards, and definitely bring extra batteries because it's cold.
My understanding is that they don't want anything touching the ground and that you got yelled at for kneeling on the ground at one
I
point.
did. That's something really to keep in mind is this is the most controlled environment I've ever been in. There's a lot of regulations internationally. There's a lot of reasons that they do this. When you're on shore, the adventure team will go out in advance and basically stake out the path that they want you to walk on. So that'll be clearly marked with colorful, like flagged poles all the way down or whatever the route is that they've decided that you're going to walk. They don't want you to go off that path. And if any animals, usually a penguin or a seal, wander onto the path, you're supposed to give them a wide berth. The fur seals are actually very curious. So often when you get off the Zodiac, they'll have a tarp where you take off your life vest and you may be issued a ski pole, which is helpful for balance, but it is also very useful for fending off animals. So depending on the time of year you go, that may vary a little bit. In my case, it was king penguins and then baby seal pups who are adorable, very curious, and completely, you're not supposed to touch them. So you have to, they're very disappointed by this. They want to play, but you have to brandish your ski pole at them to try to get them to back off. So basically, don't touch the animals, don't mess with the animals, don't go off the path, even to the extent that you noted they don't want you to kneel on the ground.
Just so everyone knows, there is an international treaty which governs the activities on Antarctica, and that literally includes kneeling. So we may or may not be able to bring things like tripods onto land.
Essentially, they're very concerned to preserve the ecosystem and the animals in Antarctica. This starts when you get off the boat. You will wade through and have to disinfect your boots before you get into the Zodiac. And when you get off the Zodiac on the way back, they will both hose you off and wade you back through the disinfectant.
You said that when we come back on board, if you have any kind of penguin poop on you, that they would hose you down, which would indicate that waterproof pants would be highly advisable, yes?
The single best thing I packed on this trip was my pair of ski bibs. So for those of you who ski, I have hard shell bibs that don't have insulated lining, but they are handily waterproof. I basically wore those every day. But yes, you get hosed down when you come back. So some type of waterproof pants are helpful, not only just to resist the splashes, from the Zodiac, wind-blown snow that may occur when you're on shore, but also you're going to get hosed off.
This brings up keeping warm. How many layers did you have underneath of those bibs of yours?
I did, I think, about 2 layers on the bottom and between 2 or 3 on the top, depending on how active I thought I was going to be. So I layered a little bit less for things like kayaking, where I knew I was going to be using my upper body. For days when I knew it was windy, I would put in like 3 layers. If you ski or do anything outside in the winter, whatever that is you wear for that, you're probably going to be fine. Tights, smart wool, long johns, just layer up, and then zip everything over the top of it, and you're good to go.
They're going to give us waterproof jackets that will be ours to keep. When do they issue that? How does that work?
In our case, they issued them like actually after we had set sail. So we were kind of steaming out. I think it was a boring part of the trip. There wasn't anything to see. We had to fill out on the form estimating our size. So I think they had some ballpark estimates, but essentially they brought us up in groups and they had sort of a staging area with different sizes of jacket laid out. And you kind of just had a free-for-all and found a jacket that fit, and then that one was yours.
What about your feet?
They will issue you a pair of muck boots that are waterproof and come up to just below your knees. So again, that's going to be helpful for when you're getting off the Zodiac. When you try them on to pick your size, I think again we had to list the size, but then we tried them on to make sure they fit. Make sure they fit over a pair of warm socks. Those of you who ski or snowshoe or something like that, I'd recommend whatever it is you do for that. I just did some hardcore wool socks and I was fine.
How much time do we actually spend on land?
They will get you off the boat as often as they can. Each trip that I took was probably a couple of hours max. Again, they try to do a morning and an afternoon landing in most cases. So they've got to get you on shore, have you walk around, get you back on the boat, motor over to the next one, get you off the boat. So you really don't have tons of time. They limited where you can go, and you also have limited time. There's some advantages to that, which is that you can't go that far. So you have a time to spend and really get the most out of the part that they have allowed you to walk into.
So there's not a lot of walking to be had.
No, a couple of landings, they had more walking, but by and large, it's pretty limited.
Just so everyone knows, for our particular trip, there's supposed to be a snowshoeing event, so to speak. And so that will probably involve a little more walking, but there will be snowshoes involved. Now, for those of you who don't spend a lot of time standing in the cold, like I do, your feet do get cold. I am bringing toe warmers for everyone, so you guys don't need to worry about that. In looking back at the last 3 years of average temperatures during the time that we will be there, we're looking at about 30 to 35 degrees throughout the day. If you're not used to hanging out in that temperature, you might want to think about what your strategy is going to be. So, what did you have on your hands?
I wore gloves under mittens. One thing you could do, which I did, was you can buy fishing gloves for winter fishing that allow you to like kind of pull the tips off of like a couple of the fingers. So I found that allowed me to be able to manipulate my camera more effectively without getting the rest of my hand cold.
So, it looks like the gloves you brought with you were the Palmith flexible fishing gloves. For those of you who haven't seen these gloves, they're not fingerless gloves because you can cover all of your digits. However, you can expose your middle finger, your first finger, and your thumb if you'd like to, which means that we can control our cameras much more effectively. I am seeing these gloves recommended all over the place by a lot of photographers who often shoot in the cold. So, what were your thoughts on the gloves?
I thought they were very helpful. Again, my fingers get cold, so I'm sort of fighting a losing battle. So my approach was to wear the gloves. I then had a heating little like chemical hand warmer that I put into a pair of mittens, and then I just stuck my gloved hand into the mitten. So I got 2 layers on my hands. Particularly if you're going to do kayaking, those were very helpful. But then when I pulled my hand out of the mittens, I didn't have to expose everything. I could just do the fingertips, and that part was really helpful.
For me personally, I've come to find that just the thin gloves made by head that you can get at Costco has been perfectly fine for me for 3 or 4 hours out in the cold. But again, this is completely personal, so you guys decide what's good for you. I also plan on bringing chemical hand warmers for all of you as well. What did you bring with you that you think you should have just left at home?
So keeping in mind, I went on a 21-day trip. It turns out long. I think I probably bought more casual clothes than I needed to. Nobody cares what you wear. Nobody expects you to dress for dinner. So that's sort of up to you what you're comfortable wearing out in public. It turns out jeans and a t-shirt was totally fine for me. I probably could have brought slightly less of that. I also then, I was not expecting how useful my ski bibs were. So I had packed a number of pairs of windbreaker pants or like sort of fleece lined pants like from Eddie Bauer. I never wore them. I just layered under my ski bibs.
So you brought like waterproof rain pants to go over like fleece lined pants and you didn't use it.
I have the windbreaker pants with fleece lining in them that I thought would be fabulous. And I ended up just wearing layers of like long johns under my ski bibs. That just ended up being more effective.
Oh, that was a surprise.
I think because if you like with the ski bibs, they cover more of you, and then you don't have the risk of the water going down the back of your pants.
What did you bring that you wish you had more of?
Probably a couple more layers of like I think pairs of like thin tops and bottoms that I could layer underneath things that would have saved me the trouble of washing them.
So, what is the situation with laundry on board?
So you sort of have 2 options. Depends on how you feel about traveling. Essentially, you're living in a hotel. So there is laundry available that works like a hotel where you give it to them, little checklist, they bring it back to you the next day, all dried, and etc. If you're prepared to like wash your like things out in the sink and hang dry them, you can do that too. I did both.
I'm afraid to ask, how expensive was it to get laundry done?
It was not cheap. I don't remember how much it was. I would say it's probably comparable to, hotels are never cheap either. I don't remember what the prices were, to be honest, but it was about that range.
Okay, so about what you'd expect in a five-star hotel.
Yeah, a hotel where you're just like, this is outrageous, but here we all are. Yes, it's that.
Okay. What about your eyeballs?
Bring them. You'll need them.
I meant sunglasses.
Yeah, sunglasses. Well, I tend to get headaches, so I'm a big fan of sunglasses. Every surface is reflective. So, yeah, they'll probably be handy.
Do you think just regular sunglasses or do they need to wrap around?
I did fine with my regular ones. They were dark. Either dark or wraparound would probably be fine.
And you actually get headaches in the sun, so and you did not require wraparounds.
I didn't require that.
Sunblock, chapstick, that kind of thing.
Yes. Again, every surface is reflective. My dermatologist definitely yelled at me when I came back. I was a little bit more tan than she was comfortable with, so I clearly didn't slather on enough. And yes, the air can be pretty dry.
Okay, lots of lotion for staying.
Chapstick. Yep. Again, personal preference and your skin type, but for me, that was definitely helpful.
This brings up the shower.
Surprisingly standard. It's a stall shower, but works like anything else. You have hot water. You have it any time of day you want. It was fine. You're not allowed to bring a hairdryer on board. I believe I had one in my little bathroom. I did not feel deprived. I could plug in all of my usual stuff, by which I mean like I could charge my camera battery, I could charge my phone, I could charge my Kindle. That was all eminently doable. I didn't need anything else.
One other thing you mentioned was Zodiac rides for sightseeing. What's that all about?
So those are a little bit different, and I took a different approach than the ones that are just from like ship to shore, where again I tucked my camera away. The Zodiac rides that were for sightseeing, I did take a camera out. I picked one at that point, and I also picked a lens because I did not feel comfortable changing my lens on a Zodiac. So those are fun. There are certain areas that you can only get to either with a Zodiac or sort of from the time constraint preferences, but they'll let you know in advance and they'll tour around. You can see things on shore. They'll take you to icebergs that are a little bit off the shore. That's where you start seeing things like leopard seals and other animals actually in the water or on little icebergs that you're floating up next to. So that can be pretty cool.
So you said that you stuck your camera in the water at some point
I
to
did.
get some
Not my DSLR. I have a GoPro. So if you get the waterproof housing for that, those things are basically indestructible. So I took one of those as well on the Zodiacs. There was a point at which the penguins and seals were actually swimming underwater. So I did shoot blind. I had a little selfie stick on it. So I literally just stuck it underwater and hoped for the best. And I got some really cool footage though. And it was actually interesting. That's the only way I could see them underwater because I didn't stick my head under. Yeah, you can do that too.
So will you share some of that footage with me so I
I
can
can share
share?
that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. The
Okay.
water's crystal clear.
Really? So the water's always crystal clear over there?
I think it's because it's so cold. Yeah, at least the parts where I stuck the camera underwater, I got some really good. If it gets close enough, you can definitely see the animals. And you can see them from the surface too. It's still pretty cool. We had a couple of leopard seals come up and come halfway out of the water and definitely give us all a little bit of side eye and then go back under.
Now you said you saw some whales when you were on the Zodiacs.
We did. You could see whales both from the boat and then from the Zodiacs. I think it's sort of luck of the draw. The boat, you obviously can see out a little bit further because you're up. We got very lucky on one of our Zodiac rides and had like a couple humpback whales that were doing surface feeding. They stayed towards the surface of the water longer than they normally do, so we actually were able to follow them. That's one thing that the expedition staff are actually really good at, particularly with the Zodiac tours, is taking advantage of whatever it is that happens to happen, particularly with wildlife.
So the question is, why did you do a Zodiac tour and not go on land?
I think in some places they either were not able to get you to shore safely, or in other places there actually wasn't a place that you could land. So I think it was a call about weather, accessibility of the land, and timing. So the Zodiac tours can actually be great, and I think that the expedition staff do a great job of taking advantage of whatever can happen, which can be anything. So my favorite Zodiac tour, we were out, and in the middle of it, a massive snowstorm just came out of nowhere. So all of a sudden, the sky got dark. We had snow coming down. You had really interesting reflections off the water and the ice. And the best part of it was we had a very small pod of humpback whales that were surface feeding, which means you could see them. They didn't come up and just have a blow and then go down. They actually stayed at the surface, kind of coming up and down. And our team followed them. So we had the opportunity to actually interact with them remotely for, I don't know. It was a magical experience. I don't know how long it was, but it was really spectacular just to see them out there. You could hear them breathing. We were that close.
Wow. Another experience you had was kayaking.
That was an amazing experience. Also, they picked the spots for that pretty well, and it allows you to kind of get much closer to the shore than you can in certainly the big boat and even some of the Zodiacs, and you're solo, right? Or you're in a tandem kayak. So it's quieter, you have more control over it. And remember, like, these animals have no land predators. So particularly when they're on land, they're fearless. That's why they tell you don't get close to them, because the animals won't stop you. So you can actually get up close to them and really get a good view of animals you're not going to see anywhere else. And the fauna as well. If you're going into a place, I think if you're on the peninsula, you won't have fauna, but if you're on some of the other islands, you can see that as well.
How were you dressed for the kayaking?
The kayaking, I think I added another layer on the bottoms just because I was going to be sitting and not moving, and then took one layer off the top because I was going to be paddling. I will say that was one trip where I was definitely very grateful for the hand warmers, particularly at the end. In my case, I think I was sufficiently distracted by the fact that the animals were really cool and the icebergs were really interesting. I was definitely cold by the time I got back on board.
So, no photography during kayaking.
We took some. I was paranoid about dropping my. I think on one of them I felt confident carrying, I think, one of my shorter lenses, and a lot of people brought their phones.
If you plan on shooting with your phones, I would probably put it on a tether so that we don't lose your phones.
I took the GoPro was great for that though. Particularly the other piece you can do underwater is the icebergs, because you'll get up next to the iceberg, which are very cool. You can see the iceberg up close. You can see the seals if they're on top of the iceberg. And if you stick your GoPro in the water, you can see exactly how far down the iceberg goes.
Wow. That's
It's pretty
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
One point on the kayaking, be aware that they will put you in a dry suit. When I'm saying I put on the layers, those layers were underneath. They then dress you up. You look like a Teletubby. But you're basically completely protected from, were you to fall over, they'll come get you, but you're not going to die of hypothermia in the first 30 seconds. You're protected.
Speaking of which, did you do the polar plunge?
I did do the polar plunge.
How was it?
It was cold. And I immediately went and had a Four Roses at the bar. But yes, I did a cannonball. I wanted to make it count. They take pretty good care of you. They put you on a little bit of a tether, so you're not constrained, but they will fish you out if you turn out to be unable to get yourself back out of there.
There were no incidences on your trip?
Nope, there were no incidents. They will photograph you as you jump in. If you're not taking photographs already, they will have a commemorative photo ready for you, and they will have hot chocolate ready for you when you come back on board as well.
Oh, fantastic.
I skipped that and went straight for the bourbon, but yes.
All right. As a side note, the trip that we're doing is the all-access tour. It includes kayaking, it includes snowshoeing, and the overnight camping. None of you need to sign up for these things. They're all going to be available to us. There's no extra fee for that on our particular trip. Is there anything else you want to add with regards to activities off of the boat?
No, I think, again, I remember, like, the environment's very controlled. So they will give you pretty explicit instructions about what you can and can't do. And I just be mindful that not to be surprised when it turns out you can't do a lot of things that would make sense. You're just not in that type of environment.
As a side note, too, with regards to the camping, since we will actually be camping over there, I'm going to assume that the location that we're using for that means that, well, obviously we can kneel on the ground and put things on the ground. So I am planning on bringing my tripod for that. I am also planning on bringing a very small fold-up stool because I plan on being up all night shooting and taking advantage of that as well. I will send you guys a link for this. Now, no guarantees on whether or not they're going to allow us to do either one of those things, but I am going to come prepared with that. Oh, last question. Did you spend any time in Ushuaia?
I did. So yes, it's a cute town. I think when we went, it was like right towards the end of COVID, so there were some restrictions that may no longer be in place. But there is plenty of hiking to be done around Ushuaia if that's something you're interested in. It's beautiful. Okay. The town is cute. There's good food. You have some extra time to spend there. I would recommend it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your words of wisdom. Maybe you can come with us.
Yeah, enjoy. It's not like anywhere else, so enjoy.